This is the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast.
This is Kevin with the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Ed M. Sobriety date, June 20th, 2003. That's a lot of years, Ed.
Yes, it is. 21 plus.
So, I heard someone call you Ranger.
Oh.
So, is it Ranger Ed? Is it Ed Ranger? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So, Wednesday night group, the world famous Lost and Found, needed a service position a couple years ago, and the butt cans are sit out on the curb. And so I volunteered to, host those butt cans and keep them friendly in my car. And lo and behold, after a very short stint of doing that, I was deemed to be called Ranger Ed, euphemistically butt can Ranger Ed. And sometimes it ends up being Ranger butt can and just Ranger. And so I've had a lot of guys come up to me, oh, you served in the, Army Rangers. And it's like, no, dude, no, I totally, honor you guys for your commitment and service to the country. But I, did not go down that path. This is, somebody saw me, hey, boo-boo, you're over in the, in the park. You'd be the butt can ranger. So
I think with us alcoholics, that is a fine service position because it needs to be done.
Totally.
Okay, we have to clean up our butts, and so that's kind of funny. I think
it's stuck. I mean, inevitably I'll go to a meeting and it's like, oh, Ranger Ed, and so around here at least in these parts, that's what I'm known as. I carry it. I'll never probably get rid of it. I still have the commitment today.
That's awesome.
Stand up and make a PSA about the cans at the meeting. So.
Well, I kind of cornered you after you took your 21-year chip.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Ed, I need to get you over here in the podcast. You're a mystery to me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know your story.
Yeah.
I've been seeing you around at men's meetings.
Cool.
For the last couple years. I don't know that I knew you before that very well, other than seeing you around.
Mm-hmm.
When did you come around to this area?
So I was born and raised in San Diego. We moved up here in 2003, the year I got sober, the second time. Come back to that. I got invited over to Captain's Table real soon. Probably within the first year, I'd gotten invited over there, and we used to we had it in a circle.
Okay.
So
yes.
And it used to be, and then we kind of switched it, and now it's in, same alignment, but it was in a circle, and actually went a few times and dug it, and just really, I've always, been attracted to men's meetings more than mixed meetings along the way.
Same.
And, just because I hear things I need to hear. And, we guys need to just kind of have a place where we can take our armor off and sit down and just be like, okay, this is what's going on.
That's
and
it.
It sucks. I mean, and not be judged or worried about what's going on.
Zero ego with the women around. Yeah.
And the heels always, it never fails. You're in a mixed meeting, you hear the heels come in, and it's like click, 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 and everybody turns their attention. And so just, the world famous Lost and Found is a mixed meeting. It's an open meeting, but there is some wonderful women in sobriety to hear the other side.
Such a good meeting.
And I need that because I'm married now for over 30 years, and my wife has seen the good, bad, and the ugly and stuck by me all these years. So I have 2 daughters, so God blessed me with girls so I could figure them out. And
me too. Yeah. I have 2 girls too.
Girl dads are the best, man.
It's awesome. It's an awesome deal.
Yeah.
So Ed, why don't you take us back, childhood or the first time you drank or used? Qualify yourself.
Absolutely. So thanks, Kevin. I really, this is super cool. And just what you're doing, just in getting people's stories out there and kind of a, recovery setting. It's super cool. I was born and raised in San Diego. I have a long history of alcoholism in my family. My mother's father, my grandfather, actually started one of the first AA meetings in San Diego back in the early 50s. It's really cool. I have when he passed, my grandmother passed, I have actually a certificate that he was given on his 10-year anniversary. And they didn't have coins back then, so they had this certificate, and it was signed by his sponsor and the secretary of the meeting, and it was super cool, really cool. So my dad's side of the family, my great-grandfather, they were from Pennsylvania coal miners, and one night great-grandpa came home, and great-grandma said, you're drunk again, you're not coming in the house, and he froze to death on the front porch. So it's just like, the things that people, put themselves in.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so yeah. And my grandfather, for the most part, died of, unchecked alcoholism. My dad, I was born 2 days before my dad's 18th birthday. So we were really close in age, and we grew up together for the most part, and drank and used together. And, he actually eventually showed me the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because he got sober, and he died a sober man with 35 years sobriety.
Wow.
My mother got sober back in the 80s. She celebrated over 40 years here, I think just this last April, she had 40 years. And so recovery, alcoholism and recovery are both deeply ingrained in my DNA. Grew up, I had a sister, and my parents got divorced when I was 13. We actually moved to Hawaii when I was 11, lived in the islands for about a year and a half, and they were falling, kind of going through, my dad's drinking was really bad, and so moved to Hawaii, moved back to San Diego. When we moved back to San Diego, they got divorced, and that's kind of when the feelings of not good enough started. The feelings of, man, what did I do? How did, it's my fault, because I found out at, about that same age that they got married after my mom got pregnant. And back in the 50s, late 50s, that was kind of like, taboo, keep her, in the corner, whatever. But it always kind of, hung over me like, oh man, I was the reason they got married, and now, I'm the reason they're getting divorced. So that, and I've done work around that, and it's all good now. But that's really when those feelings first came up, and I can distinctly remember. I don't think I had started smoking pot. I smoked pot actually before. No, about the same time I started smoking pot, and my first drink. But I tried to kill myself. Just because I wanted out. I wanted out from the hurt. And it didn't work, obviously, but it shook me to the core. Like, okay, there's something going on here. And it was a time when my mom was a single mom, raising 2 kids. And in Hawaii, I learned to surf. So when we came back to San Diego, I started surfing, and the guy that lived 2 doors up, he surfed too. So we'd go surfing together. And his brother came with us one time, and, on the way home from surfing, he's leaning over in the front seat of the car, doing something. And it turns out he's twisting one up, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what this is about. And that was just kind of a novelty that first time. But the first time I drank was a distinct memory, was one of those things where I found it. Like, okay, now the feelings of inadequacy and the guilt and shame from the divorce and all that stuff. And I grew up with there's a man in my life that my dad's family kind of adopted. He was in the Navy. He was an orphan, actually, and in San Diego. He was stationed in San Diego, and they adopted him, kind of informally adopted him. And he became my uncle. We used to refer to him as my uncle. And probably the best friend I ever had in my life. And, dude was just, no judgment ever. And we were able to drink at his place. And as I got older in teenage years, when I was 18, I actually ended up taking care of him for a couple of years because he got hit on a bicycle, pretty bad bicycle accident, and took care of him. But when I was 13 years old, he had a lot of friends in the fishing industry. San Diego was, at that time, the Portuguese and the Italian fishermen, huge industry in San Diego that eventually kind of just died completely. But these Portuguese fishermen would make their own wine. And so New Year's, they'd do these parties where New Year's Day, we'd go over to your house to start off the day and taste your wine and then eat some food. And then we'd hop in the car and go to the next guy's house. And so like this progression, party. By the time you get to the fourth or fifth house, half the people are staying there because they're just sauced. And we just kept going. And that first, that homemade, Portuguese wine was just like, oh, heaven, man. It's like, oh, no, I know what this is about. And I was off. And it just, that and going surfing and smoking a doobie every once in a while. And just, I was like managing to like control how I felt. And how when I didn't have something like that going on in my life, the feelings would overwhelm me. And it was like, I don't know how to deal with life, and that was my coping mechanism, that the solution was in the drink. Fast forward a little bit, high school, going to high school, my mom remarried. We moved up to Mission Hills, San Diego. It's above Old Town, really nice area. But I went to a school in 10th grade, and I moved around. So like from like 6th grade on, I was at a different school every year, literally every year. And 10th grade, I went to start high school because down there is like high school was 10th, 11th, 12th grade. 10th grade, I'm in high school. I get called into the vice principal's office or the counselor's office, right? Are you Ed Myers? And it's like, yeah. And you don't get called in the offices like, unless it's like something bad. And it's like, what did I do, And he's like, is this your address? Is this where you live? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, I got a call from the owner of Old Town Liquor Store. And this is like half a mile down the street from my house. And he's looking for somebody to stock the shelves for him. Are you interested in that? And I'm like, yeah. This is 10th grade, right? And so I started working at a liquor store, and I worked at that liquor store for almost 4 years, during high school, finished high school. I actually got out of high school a year and a half early. I took a test and was able to get out. But I became the party. The party started when I showed up because I was in hand, whatever we needed. And it was awesome.
What a perfect job for a high school kid.
Pre-alcoholic, right? It's like, yeah, perfect, right?
They just picked you randomly.
Unbelievable. Like, just, oh yeah, you can do this job. And so what ended up happening is like, it was really, clean cut starting this job off. And then I ended up, the guy that was, there was like three main guys that I worked with, One of them was this cokehead, complete cokehead. The other one was a really cool guy. He was actually a law student. It's so funny because he was a law student. He introduced me to his brother, his younger brother, who was the same age as me. That man ended up being the best man at my wedding. I'm actually this weekend going down to see him. He's been a dear friend for over 40 years, and just unbelievable friendship came out of that. And then this other guy was a Marine, I forget what they call them, officer, but not the officer. I forget the term, but he was an officer in the Marine Corps. Those are the three guys that kind of ran the ship. So the cokehead, he's like, oh yeah, you're stocking up the cooler, crack a cold one, put it over in the corner, and it's like, oh, okay, that's how we can do this. So it's like drinking on the job. And and I'd put all the boxes out on the side. And so then in those boxes were all the booze that I was going to take to the party when I got off. And that's, it was literally, that's how I, ended up going in and out. It was great.
Wow. Now you probably made a name for yourself. You were the guy, right?
The party started. And it's really interesting. I was flashing back on that one point. The very first blackout drunk I had was at a party that I went to, kind of just random. People would call me and it's like, hey, we're having a party, get together. Can you bring something over? And it's like, so I showed up with like 2 gallons of tequila, and they were shooting tequila in like those shrimp cocktail glasses. They're like 3 ounces, right? They used to buy them in the store. They're like 99 cents. The shrimp cocktail and the cocktail sauce. Those glasses were what we were shooting tequila with. And I don't remember how I got home that night. I woke up the next day with this horrible hangover, and I had to go to school. Like, my mom said, yeah, you can graduate from high school halfway through 11th grade, but you got to go to college, the JC college the following year. So I had 9 months of just, it was on. It was on. I was, all I did was work and get high. And it was a great time. It was when it was fun. It was working. It was fun. I used to go to high school because I was working at the liquor store and wear those big puffy down jackets back in the day, right? Big North Face down jacket. Well, the puffy down jacket hid, lids of dope, lids of, marijuana. And just so happened it hid, half ounces of wild turkey and Yukon Jack and Southern Comfort. And I'd just sit there and go for stuff. High school was a very tumultuous time for me. I never fitted in. I just never fit in high school. And so I went 10th grade at San Diego High, and then all my buddies kind of left me and went to Mission Bay High, which is like across the city. And so I ended up going to Mission Bay High for half a year, but then just got out of there. When I was working at the liquor store in that last year of high school, no, actually the summer that I graduated high school before I started college, that summer, a buddy of mine did a road trip, hitchhiked from San Diego up to Santa Barbara, and then from Santa Barbara, he had some buddies in Napa Valley. So that was the kind of the progression of this trip. And it was just this raucous debauchery. I mean, for lack of a better word, it was just on. And I actually met a girl up there in Santa Barbara. We had a relationship for a while. Came back to San Diego, that best friend of mine, and this is, the fallout and the residual effect of all of the using and drinking is this. I met a gal I just adored. I introduced her to my best friend. Well, they ended up getting married and having kids, and I never talked to him again in my life. I literally, to this day, I've never talked to him since then. This was a best friend I hitchhiked up the coast to California with. And we used to go to live music. I mean, we just got hooked into the concert scene really early. I was making money, so it was like, we always were at every concert that came through San Diego for like 3 years. It was the concert, but it was the event to use, right? I mean, that's what we did. And just live music was the scene that we did. And I've got some great concert tales that just, I still flash back, This front row to see Eric Clapton, and tour that he was doing. And it was fun. That was a time when it was fun, and it started to creep into, I needed it because it kept me away from the demons that, had raised their heads earlier in my life. 21, my dad, I moved in with my dad and got a real estate license. My best friend that was from that law student in San Diego, his brother, Danny and I got real estate licenses together. And so we started selling real estate. And I followed a girl in high school. She was a dancer in Las Vegas. And she was a dancer, not a showgirl, and there's a difference. But she was a dancer in Las Vegas. Followed her over to Las Vegas. And that kind of started the craziness that became my life for the next few years. Gambled a lot of money away, did a lot of drugs, and drank a lot. We kind of broke up. She went to Paris and started dancing in Paris, and we kind of filtered away. And I moved back to San Diego and then started college. So I was doing, I was basically starting college at age 22 to get my degree. And those next few years, that's what I was doing, was going to school. Well, during that time when I first moved back to San Diego, my dad checked into rehab. And it's like, oh yeah, he needed that, right? So needless to say, there was an event. There was a time I came home one day when I was living with him before I moved to Las Vegas. I came home and he says, hey, come over here. And we had this big glass dining room table. I mean, a big, thick, inch thick glass. And he had spelled my name out in Coke on this table. That's how my dad and I ran. I mean, just, and then we'd go to the nightclubs together, and it was just, we were off to the races. So when he checked into rehab, it was like, oh yeah, he needed that, didn't register with me like, oh yeah, you needed that too. But he invited me to the first AA meeting I ever went to. And, it was right after he got out of treatment. He's probably in his first 6 months, and his home group was a group in Rancho Santa Fe, California. Rancho Santa Fe, California is the second highest income per capita zip code in the country. Lots of money there, lots of wealth. And so this meeting, I pull up in this meeting and it's like, it's the look good, smell good crowd. And yet they're laughing. And there's like this, there wasn't any allure of they had arrived and everything was hunky-dory, right? Because the stories they told in that meeting were like, wow, are the same stories you hear in meetings today. Things were great. And then I just, I burned the whole thing down, And that was my first introduction to AA. Never really kind of thought much of it. And kind of came, when I came back around, and then probably the following 3-4 years, it always resonated with me, that feeling I got when I walked into that first meeting. So the introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous, the seed was planted. Seed was planted at that time. I started toying with the idea of, well, I should probably quit drinking. That's probably a good thing for me, but I'll still continue to smoke pot and use drugs because I'm an alcoholic, and I can do that. It's that alcohol kind of takes over and really makes it mess up for me. So, crazy times. I went through school, graduated. Things were pretty well manageable at that point in my life. But every once in a while, man, there'd just be like, I'd just go off the rails and it'd be like this 2-3 week, kind of like, wow, what was that about? And not remembering things and coming back. So I started getting kind of more serious in the program, was working for, the predecessor to Costco, which is Price Club down in San Diego. That's where they actually started, and met some really cool people there. And guy approached me about a job with Allstate Insurance, and it's like I was just finishing school, and so went and interviewed with them and ended up getting a job working for Allstate Insurance, and that's where I met my wife. Was at Allstate. And it was kind of during that time that I was starting to like, maybe I should probably stop drinking and, get serious about stuff. And it took me almost 5 years to get a year. In and out, 90-day wonder. And progressively just kept getting worse and worse. And finally, I got invited to a men's meeting, a Saturday morning men's meeting that they were starting. There was like 12 guys in this meeting. And I got elected to be the coffee maker of this meeting, and didn't think, okay, how long am I going to be doing this for now, sort of thing. But probably within that first month or two, that meeting had a topic about dads, about fathers. And man, it was like raw. I mean, just really, good, bad, ugly, relationships with dads. And I got to like, kind of get out of me the stuff, the expectations that I've been living with my dad, and just, and it just really hit home. And I stayed sober. I ended up getting a year, and then 2 years. And then I dove, headlong into the program. I was, GSR and a secretary, and, was real involved with a roundup that still goes on to this day. It's on Easter weekend down in San Diego. There's a spring roundup that they do, and got real involved with that. Got introduced to a guy and started doing H&I work. He was taking meetings into Donovan State Prison. Donovan State Prison's on the Mexico-San Diego border, a little bit east of Tijuana. Obviously, this side in California, medium security facility. And the guys in there are not coming out. We'd go into this, take meetings in there, and there'd be 15, 20 guys. I mean, they were just like lit for us to be there. It was unbelievable. And all of them, my age, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. And I was, I'm in my mid to late 20s at this time. And these guys were all doing, life, 25 years to life. And it just, really hooked me to do H&I work. Did that for almost 3 years. And I've done it up here now for a number of years now. Stayed sober, got really just, life just started getting bigger. And I distinctly remember taking a 10-year coin and thinking, man, I got into AA to get my life back. I don't need to go to any meetings anymore. And I stopped going to meetings. And that 10 years of active recovery in the middle, doing the deal, got me another 4 years and 2 months and a couple weeks.
So what do you think, everyone says, I quit going to meetings, and then next thing you know, I was drunk. Like, what do you think happened? I mean, I'm genuinely curious. I'm 17 years sober. Like, I can't imagine going back out. I know a lot of people that got 10 years and went back out.
It's crazy.
Talk me through that.
So it isn't just about meetings. You have to be doing everything else, right? You have to be doing the steps. You have to be actively sponsored and sponsoring people. And I was never good at sponsoring, so I always kind of like fluffed that off. My service work was, I'm going to do H&I work, right? And I never got into sponsoring people. I had a sponsor, had a really good sponsor. And I think the insidiousness, it sits on our shoulder. The alcoholism sits there and just waits. Cunning, baffling, powerful. It just waits. It just will sit there and wait. And we're the best at telling ourselves like, oh man, you're doing so awesome, Kevin. You don't need to go to meetings anymore, man. Look what you got going on. You got this nice setup, got some nice guitars. I mean, you got it going on, man. And you don't need to go to meetings. And if we listen to that often enough and don't continue to go to meetings to see what happens to people that don't go to meetings. That's why I continue to go to meetings, right? To see the guy walking in the door. God, we were at Lost and Found 3 weeks ago. A guy stood up, 11 years. Yeah, went back out. Gal with 9 years, same thing, went back out. It's like I'm going to fast forward here for a second, but when I had, so I went back out, but when I came back, when I made it back, my sponsor's sponsor came up to me at the very first meeting. He had 14 years. Which is how much time I had when I went back out. And he just had this look in his eye like, you got to tell me what happened, man. I'm 14 years sober. What is it? What happened? And that's your question exactly. Is these, if you don't stay in the middle, if you don't stay active, if you are continuing to like, as life gets large, because look around. I mean, in recovery, we get blessings, man. And it's just sometimes overwhelming how good life can be when you stay sober and stay in recovery and stay, relevant to your own program and not slough it off and say, I got this thing. Because that's what happened. I mean, I distinctly remember, man, life was large. I had an awesome job. My wife didn't work. Had 2 baby girls growing up. We had a house, cars in San Diego. It was just going on. And it's like, look what I got. After 10 years, I'm there. And she watched me go through that. And it was ugly. It was really ugly. There was one time there. So I went out in October of 2001 and did not get back in till a year and a half later, June of 2003. And during that time, we were in San Diego. We got in a fight over something one Sunday afternoon, and I went down to the beach, to a bar down at the beach to watch a Charger game, Sunday afternoon Charger game, and started drinking heavy. Ended up getting 86 out of the bar, just, you're not welcome. Got in my car, and I don't know if you remember the movie Bullet with Steve McQueen, when he's going into the streets of San Francisco down Lombard, down the street and catching air. Well, there's a place in Cardiff, California, Cardiff by the Sea, where it's the same Chesterfield. It's just the same street that's got these like 6 or 8, levels of street. And I was catching air coming up over these streets. Well, about the 4th time I caught air, I came over and the guy was stopped. And so I slammed on the brakes and I ended up hitting him, but it could have been a lot worse. So I banged into the back of him. And so he kind of pulls over to the side and I stumble out of the car and he's like, first thing he says to me, he's like, oh man, you're just wasted, aren't you? And it's like, no, I'm fine. Let me get my driver, or let me get my insurance stuff for you. And I got in the car and bolted. I mean, literally I was gone. And the next thing I remember, it was 6 hours later, I was 20 miles north in Oceanside, California, asleep at the side of the road in the residential, I just parked to the side of the road. I was just, asleep in the car. And I don't remember to this day, I don't remember that, those 6 hours. And I woke up and I started shaking because I was like, oh man, what did I do? And I got out and looked at the car and I hit somebody. I mean, that's all this stuff just like, it was horrible. And my wife had, it was like, 50 calls on my phone. Where are you at? Sort of thing. And I still wasn't over with because it wasn't, that was probably 7, 8, 10 months before I got sober because it just wasn't over with. I still, the Jaywalker example, man, I just like, oh no, I'll be okay. Then really shortly after that, I was at a golf event. I mean, same thing, blacked out. Wife's looking for me, 2:30 in the morning. Where are you at? And it's like, don't remember driving home that night. And it just started, it's got progressively worse. So she calls me at work one day and she says, well, maybe we should move to Portland. I go, you nuts? I said, it rains up there, And she had family here and she could kind of see the writing on the wall. And she had 2 little girls. And it's like, if this thing just completely burned to the ground, where's she going to be? And so we ended up moving up here in April of 2003. I came up in March. I actually got transferred with the brokerage firm. I was in the stock brokerage business, and I transferred with the firm I was with. So I was up here for a month by myself, and it was on, man. There was good weed, and I was just like, by myself for the most part, and worked during the day. And that was April, March, April, they moved up here. June, I had a business trip that I had got invited to a conference back in Chicago to go to. And at that time, my dad was living in Florida. And so when I was working for Merrill at the time, before that, whenever I would go on these trips to the East Coast, I'd always add on a leg down to Florida to see my dad. So I go to Chicago and go down to Florida to see my dad and then come home. Well, that trip, this is June of 2003, right? So TSA really hasn't completely ramped up everything they got going on, right? I thought it'd be a good idea to take a couple joints with me to, Chicago and, into Florida. I didn't get caught, but that's the insidiousness and the craziness of I'm going to take dope on a plane, that TSA is like got their heightened awareness for, terrorist activity. So they were starting to do, pat downs and all this stuff. Didn't get caught, but, there was just craziness on that whole trip. So I go down to Florida after the conference, and I was in Florida for like 3 days, 2.5 days. And the last night I was there was a Saturday night, and it was on, and come stumbling in at like 3:00 in the morning, and Dad opens the door and he's like, "Yeah, you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." He said, "Yeah, you look like you're drunk," and I'm like, "No." It's the only time I ever lied to my dad, and he knew it. And this is like 3 a.m. My plane left at like 7 the next, 3 hours from now. So, I just barely like laid my head down and I'm waking up. Before I'd gotten back to Portland, he had been on the phone with my wife and they had arranged in outpatient treatment at Providence for me. So that was like the week before I got sober. I had like a week in there of, before I started the program. Last meeting I went to, I smoked dope before I went to that meeting at the Delano Club. Mike Young it's when I met Mike Young, and he was, crazy brother in sobriety. But that started my second journey, and that was 21 years ago, 21 years ago last month. And, I stay really, 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 really close to this program now. I don't let myself get too far down that path that you just asked me about. Oh, I got time now. I don't need to go to meetings anymore. I sponsor a guy now that's been a blessing. That is just a huge blessing in my life. Got involved with H&I work up here. Got badged to go into the facilities for the Oregon State facilities like the month before COVID shut everything down. Since they opened them back up 2 years ago, I take a meeting in there, on Thursdays. Haven't done it here the last couple months because of some health issues that I'm dealing with, but we'll get it started back up again. And that, it's so, the blessings that this program allows you to receive if you just do a few simple things, and just stay relevant to who you are, It's easy to get over the top and say, "Oh man, I got this thing handled. I got it going on." But it becomes a way of life. I mean, it becomes something that you really. My dearest friends are in this program. Even probably more so than my family. I say, my family's whacked out, man. I got whack jobs. My sister. I mean, bless her heart. I mean, we're saving a seat for her because she's just out there, and I stay really close. I stay really, really, really close. So, one of the things that I really, that I grabbed onto early on in that first time around, that when I first got sober, was a group of guys that I could relate to. We were all kind of got sober about the same time. One of those guys is I probably talk to him once a week, once every other week. And he's become almost like a spiritual guru. He's a very, very interesting man. But during that time, that early sobriety, finding guys to run with, that were kind of at the same emotional level that you're at, same, kind of same time in the program. And we just had some fun times, times that I look back on now and I go, oh my gosh, we went to the Reno air races. Reno has, these unlimited planes that they fly in September. And we took a trip up there, about 4 years in a row. We did that. Same guys for the most part. And just, the camaraderie and the emotional bond that you build with friends over the years. I lost track of a few friends, and then, about 5 years ago, maybe about 8 years ago now, I'm thinking about it. Real good buddy of mine, we just kind of reconnected. And, he's got an amazing, amazing story. I mean, double open heart surgery, for a ruptured aorta. He's lucky to be alive. I mean, just unbelievable. And he's still sober. He's still walking the earth. And, it's those types of relationships that you get to have in Alcoholics Anonymous that I don't know anybody outside of the program that I hear of them. I don't hear them. Every once in a while I hear, I grew up with this guy and we were really close and really tight over the years. But, you look around and you see people that have really meaningful relationships. And that's what it teaches us. It teaches us how to, the book talks about it, we're not people that would normally mix. We have problems forming emotional bonds. We can't, we just can't do that. And yet here we are doing that. Here we are. We get to learn what life is about, the connection of one person talking to another person about the same issue. And that's the beauty of, Bill and Bob's first talk and why it's just, mushroomed into this, this movement and epic adventure for, millions of people. Wherever I go, I typically will find a meeting to go to somewhere, along the way. I'll be down in San Diego this weekend. It's like, there's a couple meetings down there that I make it to. We go to Hawaii. There's a couple meetings that, we plug into over there. And it's just, you make lifelong friends friends in the bar never were like this, they were your friend till you ran out of money. I mean, my buddies, show up at the party with all the booze. They were my friend till the booze ran out. And then it was like, we were all, what happened to that one? Okay, well, I guess he's gone.
So true.
Right?
Yeah, I have a funny story about Hawaii. Me and my wife went on our honeymoon there.
Sweet.
We started a meeting here in Hillsborough called Keep It Simple years ago. And it was on Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Well, we went on our honeymoon to Hawaii. And we're like, well, while we're here, we should find a meeting.
Yeah.
And we're looking through the book over there. And there's a Keep It Simple at 7:30 on Tuesday. So shout out to Keep It Simple in Kauai.
Yeah.
If you're listening. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. It's a cool deal.
Yep, it is. It is. I've had some awesome meetings. When my mom was, so my mom got sober in D.C. She actually married a guy that ended up being a congressman, serving in Congress for like 4 terms. So I would go back there. It was, when I was in the insurance business, first trying to get sober, but I was sober for a few years. Got a chance to meet Sandy Beach, the great, tape master. But we would go to meetings back there, and it was just, growing up around the program, at that point in my life. Because, you hear about it. It's like, you start drinking and using, you start like kind of emotionally, you don't continue to grow. And then you get sober and you're 15, 20 years older than your emotional growth, and you still have to figure this thing out. So it was really cool to live that time in my life when my mom was getting sober. My dad was sober. They kind of showed me along the way, how to do this thing. Never sponsored me, never, got involved like that, but just, we'd go to meetings and just, the friendships and the relationships that we established over the years. That's kind of the magic of, this gig. And it really, if there's a message for the newcomer in all this, it's stay. That's my message. We hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. And it's like, I keep coming back, and, I'm always saying stay. If you hear something in the meetings, you hear something in recovery circles that, resonates, it's like, just stay. Because if I had stayed and not listened to, my ego and the little alcoholic on my shoulder telling me that I got it all together and all that, and a bag of chips, 2 bags of chips, man, you got it going on. So you don't need to be going to these meetings. No, just stay.
That's great advice, to just stay. And I've relapsed a bunch of times. And every time I relapse, trying to collect that 30-day chip again, raising my hand, the humility, my ego, I was in so much fear of what people thought of me. And the ego, like, oh, that guy relapsed again.
Oh, what a loser, man.
What a loser. That's what's going on in my head.
Right? Exactly.
Everyone doesn't care. They're saving. We've been saving you a seat, fool.
How special is it when anybody relapse, they come back in the rooms, it's like they're greeted with open arms.
Yep.
We don't kill our wounded. We just like, I felt that. I totally,
It's a miracle that we're back.
Oh, yeah. I'm 3 times lucky, man. I just count my blessings all the time about that.
Yeah. And I always say it's easier to say no to that drink at that one moment than it is to get sober again from scratch.
Oh yeah.
Killing that one little moment where you're tempted right at that point is much easier than trying to get in the rooms and start over. It really is.
Totally. Yeah. It's, that is the message. The message is stay. You're wanted, welcomed, and loved in this place. And it just, that's what was shown to me. And that's all I do is, I just pay it forward again.
Ed, thanks for showing up this evening.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for listening to the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also join us on YouTube or Facebook for some bonus videos and pictures. Thanks again for tuning in.